Perfect. Let me just get the chat window back open up here for us. So you should be able to see the screen as we take a look at it. But my name is Pat Petersen. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer and a manager on our modern work team. I work for an organization called RSM. RSM, the team that I'm on, is the consulting side of it. So we implement and deploy lots of solutions. But my role specifically is working with organizations on how to better deploy and utilize 365. So I utilize my background as a trainer as well as a public high school teacher here in Minneapolis, or Minnesota, I should say, Minnesota, prior to that. So the first thing, as we take a look, some of the items here to go through, just like what was mentioned at the beginning, do want to, just stress the importance of getting that community awareness of what's offered out here. I do think Minnesota's got one of the stronger environments and user base that's out there. So if you can attend a future user group meeting or participate, I certainly encourage you to do that. And then the sponsors as well. I think that's a really important piece to recognize the sponsors for it. They allow for those gift cards as well as that Surface Go at the end of the session here today as well. So what we're going to cover today is to take a look at the idea of rolling out Office or Microsoft 365 and really think about, what the current environment is. I mean, you take a look at this specific presentation, and had I done this, a year and a half ago, I think it would look a little different, right? I think specifically here, as we think about that adoption that's out there today, it looks different. Organizations have rapidly moved to 365 from an email hosting side of it, but then to take advantage of tools like Microsoft Teams or even SharePoint to not have to rely heavily on VPN. And so those are some of the elements that we're going to talk about here. We're also going to explore some of the licensing piece of it. No, I am not a Microsoft licensing expert, nor do I act like I am either. So there are a lot of questions and items around licensing, that may start to come up with some of the different tools out there. But, hopefully, in all honesty, the licensing itself, if you just bought E5, you wouldn't have too much of an issue there. But, certainly, as an asterisk, anything that you learn or presentation-wise throughout the day today, your licensing does depend upon it as well. We'll also take a look at a common, kind of start to finish roadmap and what that can look like for most organizations. As what was mentioned here, feel free to interrupt me. Feel free to unmute or utilize the chat window as well. We certainly can make sure we keep an eye on that as well. So items we're going to talk about: introductions, current usage, kind of the order of deployment and what that looks like. We'll talk a little bit about training, some tools and features to highlight here, collecting some feedback from users. And then hopefully we have some time for questions here at the end itself. This has been timed out to be about 75 minutes. So when you think about that aspect of it, keep that in mind that there may be some extra time at the end. So who am I? I didn't share this in my earlier session today, but if you've seen me or been around, myself, I am a certified trainer, manager, like I mentioned, manage a few individuals, but then have a leadership role in the training and user adoption side with our clients. I do own a 1975 AMC Pacer, so if you see that cruising around the South Metro, that is me in the beige one that's out there. There's a few of them around still. Some of you can probably relate. That's probably my biggest quirk out there as an individual. All right. So here's the three leading questions as we take a look at it. The first thing to think about is, what if you didn't use all that Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, gym membership, or Spotify? This is a question that comes up, probably came up a little more regularly prior to the pandemic. But what if you didn't use these tools? What if you paid for them, but you didn't use them? Or let's take a gym membership, out there. Let's say you bought a gym membership or paid for it, but all you did was use the treadmill. You didn't take advantage of the sauna, or you didn't take advantage of the pool area. You didn't take advantage of any of the classes they offered. Right? So you're basically leaving money behind. And so this is a scenario that a lot of clients and a lot of individuals really struggle with is, how do we ensure that we don't leave some of those features behind, but at the same time, think about how can we make sure that we don't overwhelm our users, right? I think that that's a key element here too. And if you take a look at these items there, Netflix does a really good job, right? They don't overwhelm you with their entire catalog. They give you focus ones based upon what they think you would like. Same with Amazon and Hulu, and obviously with gym membership. Spotify, same aspect. There's algorithms that are keeping track of it. But then let's take another step back. Let's say that, across your organization, let's say that your organization is just your family. And your family uses uses these tools. But not everyone in the family uses the tools. Not everyone uses Netflix, or not everyone uses Spotify, although you pay for those, right? So think about in terms of that aspect of it. So think about, just because you use some of these tools, it may mean that not everybody in the organization uses these tools too. So I think that that's a key element here to think about as we go through. So the next piece here, as we take a look at it, is really focused on what a modern worker is. And so when we think about the modern worker across 365, we're focusing in on someone that's always mobile, always moving, someone that's not tied down to a specific device. For instance, I'm in our offices in downtown Minneapolis today. With being on a few different presentations, I thought it was better not to be at home with a 9.5-year-old, almost 10-year-old doing distance learning. But we also live in social networks, right? We live in the ability where there's communication happening all the time. We work on multiple devices. The ability to join a meeting directly from your phone and then move to another, pick up and move or relocate. We work with outside or external individuals as well. I think that's key element here, is that most of you have multiple devices, as well as multiple people you work with, whether they're vendors or contractors, maybe other organizations that do similar aspects to what you do. I think that that's really an important piece to think about and to remember here. So modern workplace, this is the next piece, right? So when you think about what the modern workplace is, and I wish I would take a screenshot of this, and I mentioned this earlier in my earlier session as well. When you think about, who helped get you there this year, who helped with deployment of your modern workplace? What does that mean? But when you think about what a modern workplace is, it's really the ability of working, managing, and securing your work environment. And we'll cover some of those elements today. I think the security aspect of it is really an interesting one for us. And we have a team of dedicated security individuals here at RSM. But I think, when you think about it, it's no longer just bound to that specific on-prem model. For it. So there's a lot of different items, really think about and consider here. Really a focus that users can work anywhere on any device. This is happening today. If you would have looked at this a year ago, some of you might have still had desktops or still had to, go into the office to get your work done. A lot of you probably don't have to go into a physical building anymore. You can work from anywhere that you have internet access. And that's mostly thanks to the 365 model, the ability to have your files, the ability to secure the environment, and then have conversations and meetings like we're in right now. And then the other piece of it is really to drive that adoption is the creativity to automate. Giving power to the users from a citizen developer standpoint, giving power to the users to really identify and automate different tasks that are out there. One that I just utilized that was published by a team member of mine is really simple. Now, when somebody sends me a Teams chat, I want to go ahead and have that, and I need to follow up on that. I want that to go to Microsoft To Do. And so that's a really easy example here of an automation where somebody was creative enough to create it and then made it available for me to utilize. But what are some of the trends that we're seeing, out there in the marketplace for us? I think the key item here is from, items in the market that we're seeing itself is digital and demand for remote working is there. that is there, that will stay here. That is not going to go away. Also, the blurring boundaries between time and place. This is one that I don't know how to do it. I'll be completely open and honest. I am not great at that element. And maybe it's because, from a working side of it, I lack hobbies or lack something of that nature that I cannot disconnect from work. But I think it's important for all of us to recognize that that boundary between time and place is really difficult when you don't leave the building you're in. When you don't pack up to go into a specific office or go into a specific building, that's a tough boundary to go off of. If anyone's got any specific tips on that, let me know. I've certainly can use those myself personally. Next one here is the demand for lifelong learners. This goes right back to the training side of it. Most people want to learn. They want to understand why they're being asked to do or what tools they're being asked to use on a regular basis. Next trend is the shrinking shelf life. So when we think about that information itself, we're expected to know a little bit less for us. And at the same time, that shelf life is shrinking as well. So we're expected, obviously, to know all this information, but then the timeline is, basically throw it away. It's not lasting as long. And this goes back to when I was a trainer with an organization here in town. I had a manager that once told me that when he trained on, it's drawing a blank on me right now, not Lotus, but Novell. When he trained on Novell, he had a binder that was 3 inches thick, and that's all he had to know. When you think about what that means is if you had to know, let's just take one tool in 365 like Teams. What do you need to know if you're going to manage Teams successfully? You need to know just Teams in general. You need to know the voice if you're using it, meetings, SharePoint, and the list of the Office 365 in general. That's not a 3-ring binder anymore. That's multiple binders that are out there. All right, somehow I got auto muted here. So it's constantly changing. And then the last piece is the growing impact of AI and automation is really important to understand that's a trend that's coming, as well, and utilizing that. So expanding those out a little bit, I'll go through these a little bit quicker. I just wanted these in here for you if you wanted to download this afterwards and be able to see some of this information and some of the sources behind some of those trends. So just click through those a little bit faster for us. When we're thinking about the modern workplace and you're looking at deploying this out across your organization, what is really the key thing? What are some of those opportunities and risks that are out there? And what I really want to make mention about is down in the bottom, left-hand side, and there's a lot of text on this slide, so I apologize, with it. I didn't design it here specifically, but the digital transformation is an important element. Companies are investing 1 in 5 on innovation and strategy. They want to do more. So if you're someone that has that available to you, I would encourage you to think about some of the different tools and items that you can use at your disposal to help out with that. With that, utilizing the technology that's already out there, utilizing some of those tools that are already out there. Later on today, we're going to talk about a tool called, the Microsoft gives us, is called the Learning Pathways, which is an entire SharePoint site that can be deployed with a click of a button to your tenant that comes with all of the Microsoft training materials, which is a really valuable piece to take a look at. All right. Next thing that we're just going to briefly talk about here is some of the distractions that are getting in the way. This is from kind of a my analytics approach to how you're working here. But being unproductive in meetings. So whether they're being canceled or they're just too many meetings out there. I think I saw an organization here next week go fully meeting free. The week of Thanksgiving. A lot of organizations are going meeting-free Fridays that are out there as well, just to allow for that catch-up time that's out there. One of the features that you may not be aware of here, and I'll open it up here briefly, is in Outlook. If you are someone that manages meetings and does meetings quite a bit, there is an option here to automatically end meetings and appointments a few minutes early. Now, keep in mind that doesn't mean that they end early, but it means on the scheduling aspect of it, you don't have to have a user identify whether they can leave or not, right? You've given them 5 minutes from that overlap. So certainly things to think about here as you're taking a look at rolling some of those pieces out. In the chat window, anyone utilize this feature here to end meetings early? And if so, does it work? Let you guys put that in the chat window. All right. Next item here, as we take a look, splitting it up, there's a few different areas: productivity, security and compliance, mobility here. But when we think about why this modern work concept is important, this digital transformation, why is it important here? Productivity and collaboration is really important here because a lot of times paper format is still used. A lot of times they need to work in their environments and they're not using, their specific, all the tools that are out there for them to take a look at. So on the right-hand side of each of these slides is some of the pieces you can do to get started to use that. So if you're at the beginning of your journey, what are some of the items that you can use to get started? And the one piece that I always like to mention is focus in on the common use cases. If there's one piece you remember here today, it's focus in on those use cases. What should users need to know how to do, and relating it back to the business? When you think about attending a meeting or joining a meeting for Microsoft Teams, you could go through, here is how you share your screen, here's how you do this, here's how you do that, here's how you do that. That's not important. Some users like that, but really, what do people need to know? What are the expectations? When you're ready to present, how do you unmute yourself? When you're ready to present, how do you share your screen? How do you ensure that you have items blocked so you don't receive access notifications? So keep it simple. That's really the important item, here to take a look at. From a security side of it, if you're looking at rolling that out from it, using multi-factor authentication, and I think, the reasonable policy is probably up for discussion for it and what that means. And I think if you look at that, that's a no-brainer. If you're an administrator, you need to be using MFA. If you're not an administrator, you should be using MFA. If you don't have multi-factor, configured or some sort of security, you want to make sure you get that done if it's device specific or account specific. Many plans come for some sort of baseline Office 365 DLP, data loss prevention. That's the idea of the accidental file sharing. I always think about this as an example here. As you're taking a look at rolling out these applications, and oftentimes I get challenged on, well, I don't want to allow sharing outside of my organization for SharePoint or Teams or OneDrive because I can't trust my users. But you can trust them to send an email. I think that's a key element here. So using DLP to help ensure that. Taking a look at Exchange encryption, are all basic items there. And then, of course, reviewing some of those reports weekly from a secure score. Identity and access, there's that multi-factor again. And then any changes that are coming out, just make sure they go to end users. Be proactive and communicate. Users are less likely to resist a change when they know it's coming. And so I think that that's an important, piece to think about for us. Devices here, utilize Intune if you have the licensing for that. Otherwise, utilize a conditional access policy as well. Keep in mind that if you utilize Intune and have that there, I think it's really important for you to have that set up and utilize that. A lot of organizations have the licensing for it, and they're just not using it because mobile device management impacts users. At the same time, I'll be honest with you, a solid mobile device management actually makes it easier for users to access their work data. It also makes it easier for them to disconnect from work because those apps are clearly labeled and clearly identified for them as well. There's not the blur between personal and work related. Developing culture, the last one of this specific piece, use meetings or use meetings and videos when possible. This is one that I think a lot of us struggle with still, is being comfortable sharing our video. Not in this instance, I'm not expecting you to do that here, but just in general, sharing a video isn't something that you need to do all the time, but it is something that, you should be comfortable doing at least some of the time as you take a look at it. And so that helps with that connection a little bit here. Provide access to resources and training. That learning pathways is really, really important. Maybe even utilizing, Yammer to help out with some of those elements too. And then the last piece here is, what does that look like? How do you get that working in a remote world like we're in right now? It's tough, right? It's tough to help out with that adoption when you're not physically with somebody. But at the same time, it actually makes it easier because you have to rely on that technology a little bit more to make that be successful along the way. All right. Let's jump into some of the current usage aspects out there. So when we think about current usage, there's some starting points to take a look at. And the first thing I think to think about is how can we understand what is even capable? And then we'll take a look at adoption plans, some surveys that you can use, as well as some usage reports here as well. So the first thing is the immersion experiences. And this is a little bit maybe smaller for you to read, but what I want to take a second back and think about is Microsoft understands that users struggle with knowing what tools are out there when they don't have the tools, when they don't see them in use. And so these immersion experiences, Microsoft has a handful of different ones out there. They're meant to be hands-on. They're meant to be led by a facilitator that goes and actually talks about what these tools are and how to use them. The outcome of these will be some of those use cases. How can you ensure that these are successful? How can you ensure that working remotely is going to work? It's hard to do this in your environment because, of course, any changes there impact everyone that's out there. And you just may not have all that content there. So we're actually seeing a lot more clients that have had Office 365 deployed before. We're seeing them go ahead and utilize these experiences one more time to see what's new and what's different, right? To see how Teams works, to actually understand what integrations can come in and be able to use. And if we think about that adoption, kind of phased rollout aspect of it, there's a few things here to take a look at. And depending upon where you are on your journey, you may have already been here, already done, right? Everyone's on 365, everyone's using Teams, everyone's using SharePoint and OneDrive, we're using known folders, we're totally drinking the Kool-Aid, we have Intune deployed. And you may say, okay, Pat, what next? What else can we do? We want to do more. What is that? Well, let's come back. Let's start out here. Let's say you have it fully deployed, right? Now you're back here at this starting point. And if you're at the starting point, what's a workshop that you can do? Well, there's those app in a day workshop, the citizen developer. Maybe you don't have Power Apps or you don't have flows created or automates, whatever they want to call them these days. Maybe there's another workshop that's out there for you. So keep in mind that as you move through that, this should be a cycle. This should be a cycle. It could be the entire Office 365 solution, which is what you're seeing here on my screen kind of outlaid. But take one of those tools. Take a new tool out there, for instance. One that I always like to think about here is a tool, and I'll put it on the screen here as well. is not necessarily a tool, but a group of tools, project, planner, and to-do, right? Is there a hyphen in to-do? Anyways, project, planner, and to-do, right? If you think about those, gosh, you throw a project in there and project management, that's going to be a lot more work. But let's just focus in on planner and to-do. If you think about planner and to-do, how do you ensure that people start to use the tool and understand how the tool is used out there? Maybe that training and support side of it is just open office hours, or just a few links out to LinkedIn Learning, or Brainstorm, or whatever learning tool you want to use, or videos that you've recorded that can help out with that. Think about that. It doesn't have to be the entire application or all of Office 365. I think it's important to kind of segment this out. And so one of the pieces that I relate to here quite frequently is one of the industry teams that I'm on here at RSM is the financial services team. So banks, credit unions, and so on. And if you're aware of those industries, at least the small ones, not the big banks and organizations, but the small ones, your small community ones, in the outstate area, they struggle with moving to 365 because they don't know what it is, right? They maybe don't understand some of those pieces and some of those tools. And so really understanding what tools are important and coming up with a plan, which we'll see here in just a little bit, a plan on what tools they should start to use when for us. So let's detail a little bit more into kind of some common adoption phases here as we take a look at it. Oops, back one. That stakeholder communication is really, really important. I would recommend using a team. And in fact, there is a new team template available for adoption of 365. So you don't even have to start from scratch anymore. It's available for you. Get some of those business scenarios out there, right? I think that's a key element here to think about, is those business scenarios are really, really important. Think about those scenarios where that work stream may go like this to get something done. How can you make it just go like that, where it's a little more gentle to make that happen? The other items here to take a look at then is the technical readiness. How do we make sure that everyone's ready in the organization? What does that look like? How do we do our training? Do we have to hire a trainer? Do we just need to spend some time taking a look at that? Then additional programs. And then the last piece is always listening, gathering that feedback. Holly, I love your last name. But also with that, I believe this is a Petersen show this afternoon. But Holly put a question in the chat item that's unrelated to this here as well. But the idea is, what tool am I using to draw on my screen? It is a free tool from Microsoft called Zoom It. I'll type it out on the screen here real quickly. Zoom It. It does not install, it just runs. So you can take it, well, when I used to have to take it onto flash drives, I could, or go and download it. So it takes a little bit of practice, just remember. All right. But you use that and draw out, so there's a lot of different pieces. Cool. Good question. Next piece here, as we take a look and we have it rolled out, right? So let's say it's too late for those adoption. It's too late to do those pre-planning. Now I need to start from somewhere. What does that mean? And the answer is usage reports. Look at what users are using and what they're not using. If they're using Teams chat messages, do you need to provide any training on Teams chat messages? No. You probably don't, right? Because they're utilizing them and they're using them. But let's think about and say, all right, what if they're not using SharePoint and we think that they should be using SharePoint? Or what if the OneDrive elements, we don't see a lot of usage around OneDrive? What do we have available there for? So let's take a look here real briefly. Nothing too crazy. We'll bring in our... This is a demo environment, so don't be too excited with the data in here. really basic, but there's a lot of different usage reports out there. Be able to see in terms of active users, what users are working on, what users are using along the way, and depending upon the tool, there's also additional usage reports in there. Teams, SharePoint, all have additional usage elements there. So in this case here, I can see, I'll change this to maybe the past 90 or 180 days as an example for it. So it looked like, 180 days ago, we were using, Teams a little bit more frequently in this demo environment. Now it's been a little less, a few less users along the way for us. What was 180 days ago was what day? May. Okay. Next piece here as we take a look at, we also have additional, information down below. What users are doing, what files are stored there. So use these to your advantages. If you're trying to come up with a training plan out there or trying to understand where we can help out users, take a look. What services are we using and what services are we not using? I think about one of the tools that you can use to really help out quite a bit here. Yammer, maybe you're, and I always like to say a large enough organization, large is to be defined what that means, but maybe you're an organization that doesn't only need teams, but you also need communities. And you need to separate out the two, because a team is not a community, right? A team is a group of people that work together towards a common goal. A community are people that interact with each other. Yes, they work together. Yes, you work on a project together. Yes, they can complete tasks together. But when you step back and take a look, there is a clear separation between what a community and what a team is. And so if I had to rename Yammer, I would call it communities, because I think that that's the key difference between teams and Yammer. But obviously they overlap as well. But maybe there's a tool out there like that. Maybe it's really simple, right? Maybe you're able to reference some of the items here as well to take a look at and see some of the forms activity, as well. What are users doing for forms? What are they signing in on? Let's take a look here real quickly. We'll expand this one out. So I can start to see who's, when was their last active dates along the way. Again, this is a demo environment, so not too crazy or too exciting, but you get the idea that this is a really good way to drive some of that adoption. What else can this do? Not only drive adoption, but this also means that you can use these people to help communicate the message. Find the person that's sending the most Teams messages. Have them explain to everyone else why they find it valuable. Find the person that's using forms and have them explain to somebody that's refusing to move over to forms and is using SurveyMonkey or Survey123 or Google Sheets or whatever. Have them talk to them. Use them to help you drive that adoption of those tools. And the reason for it is twofold. One is you're utilizing the subscription better. And then the other piece is if that data is all in the same environment, it's a lot easier to secure. It's a lot easier to manage. And we can also ensure that when a user comes and goes, they get access to the right data. We don't have to hunt and try and figure out where that data is when a user is leaving the organization. Next piece to take a look at, and I won't necessarily show us here today, but there is another component. You might have seen it at the bottom corner of my screen, is that Power BI usage analytics. This is a dashboard that Microsoft gives you. You do need a Power BI Pro license, but you can get a trial version, at least the first few months that you look at it. But in terms of what users are using and what they're not. So this is a really good way to take a look at it and to see that information on what users are using, what product user activity. Basically, it's similar to what you saw or similar to what you'd look at from a usage with inside of the admin center, but at the same time, maybe a little bit more detailed or focused area for you to be able to go. Of course, you can customize it as well. All right, let's talk the $1 million question. $1 million question. What order should I do these tools in? Maybe you're brand new to 365. Maybe you've only deployed email. Maybe you have everything deployed. What is the order that I should have gone into? Guess what? There's not a plan that works for every organization. There's not. There is not a consistent one that works for every organization. What I really think is important to think about is, what tools are we going to deploy and what is the business purpose of those tools? And if you're an IT individual and you don't necessarily understand the breadth of 365, or maybe you came from the SharePoint world, maybe you came from the Exchange world, or you manage Skype for Business on-prem, or you're just a server administrator out there, and now you're having to manage 365, what can you use to help? I think it's important for you to really think about the tools that are out there. This is not up to date, so I apologize for not pulling an up-to-date screenshot here specifically, but this is the Matt Wade and his periodic table of Office 365 is a really great tool that can help define some of the different use cases, as well as an example of all the different tools out there. So what is Office 365? It's not one thing. It's not email only. It's not SharePoint. It's not OneDrive. It's not Teams. It's all of these. And when you think about that, it's overwhelming. If you went to a user and you said, here you go, here's everything, it's overwhelming. So pick out which ones mean and which ones have value to each of your employees, and be diligent with what that communication looks like. So when we think about a normal journey, so I won't say a standard journey, but it's more of a normal journey. This is kind of what I'm seeing today. Okay. This is what I'm seeing at a very high level. This is what a smaller, less than 300 individual organization is doing today. They are moving to Office 365 for their Office applications. They're running an old version of Excel or Word, and it's just not working. Now that they're getting their Office licensing from 365 and subscription-based, they're dipping their toe in and they're using email then as well. Because let's be honest, we've been using cloud-hosted email for years, decades. I have a Hotmail account from the mid-90s that I still use to this day. So from that aspect of it, email, pretty straightforward. Now, here's the next three things. And yes, you could interchange these blocks and move them around. If we were in person, we could have big cardboard boxes and put them in different orders in terms of what it looks like for each of you. But in terms of here, this is traditionally what we're seeing. We are seeing Teams full in right now. And no, it's not the Microsoft commercials of Teams, right? It's not those commercials of it. I joke, there's a local TV station here in Minneapolis, and I happened to catch a little bit of a promo video that they were doing on Zoom. On being Zoom exhausted is what they called it. They're Zoomed, or what, they had some term for it. Anyways, the amount of online meetings that you participate in. And across the bottom of the screen was all like, are you zoomed out? And think about the concept here. And what were they showing? A video of a Microsoft Teams meeting. And it was just like, oh no. But the online meetings are really an important piece. Kat, thanks for putting that in the chat window. I wish you could be in person. I interacted with Kat, 15 years ago, Kat, when I first met you. So when we take a look here at the idea from a team side of it, they need the ability to chat. They need the ability to share files. They need that workplace. They need the ability to have meetings. What comes next then? Those tools that users don't know or don't need to know how to use. Again, smaller organization. Don't think of this as your large 10,000, 15,000 person organization. This is a smaller organization. maybe family held, family managed, small leadership team. They're using Teams, and then naturally they're using SharePoint and OneDrive. Now, the piece around this whole thing is to think about some of the security elements that come with it too, right? How do we ensure that some of the security pieces are there and important as well? So what does it typically look like, right? What types of tools does it typically look like? And what I want to make a quick mention for is it's a consistent circle. We've talked about this already. It's a consistent circle. We start and we continue on and on and on and on. It should never stop. Adoption and training should never stop. Whether you come to the events like this or you watch videos or read blogs, you're never stopping learning, and the same thing happens for your users. They don't want to stop either. So this is an important element. Maybe it's, the first time through we're focusing in on email and we're going around. Then we're coming back and then we're focusing in on Teams and coming around. And then it's Yammer at the end and coming around. I have worked with clients that have deployed Teams before email. They've deployed SharePoint before Teams. They've deployed OneDrive before anything else. And the answer is there's not a consistent approach or which way works best for organizations. But what you do get is some flexibility in the licensing aspect of it. So depending upon where you're at, and I apologize that I don't have this, set up from a government side of it here, but keep in mind from a licensing standpoint of it, it's a pretty good approach in terms of what you're looking at for it. Yes, if everyone had budget and those types of pieces, would you move down to E5? Probably, because you get Power BI, you get some audio conferencing and phone system capabilities here as well. But that may not be, up to everyone's alley here for it. So where are you at in your journey? With it, we're seeing a lot of organizations and a lot of users kind of hanging out in this area right down in here, right? They're in that area. That's a really poor circle job. Let me do that over again here. They're hanging out down here into this kind of main area for it. So here, when you take a look at it, they have Office 365. That's how they got their email there, but now they need Intune, so they're buying E3 on top of it. Or they needed Windows, so they're moving into E3, M3 rather at that point for it. So just keep in mind that, we're starting to see people shift a little bit further as that adoption comes in. But some of your users can also still stay at that level as well, right? That's the flexibility that's out there. All right, there's a few detailed comparisons in here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I'm just going to, essentially mention it to you here that if you're using different plans, some comparisons, but of course, these are all widely available on Microsoft's website as well. Some add-ons. All right, let's get into the tools to introduce in what order. So we've talked a lot about the concept, right? What purposes do we put out there? Now we're going to get a little more granular and focus in on tools. So here, a few things. If you build it, they will come in Field of Dreams. If you watch Wayne's World 2, if you book them, they will come. I feel sorry for Teresa, who just joined the meeting and now she's seeing this slide. All right. But when we think about it here, the whole if we build it, they will come concept works in Hollywood, but it does not work for technology adoption, right? So it does not work for technology adoption. Just because they have Planner available doesn't mean they're going to use it. Yes, some of your users will because they're curious, but it doesn't mean all of them will. Doesn't mean all of them will. So Hollywood is wrong, right? Hollywood is wrong. Oh, spoiler. Sorry, Holly. Hopefully you got different screenshots. All right. All right. Well, if you engage them, they will come. That's the better way. All right. Okay. She didn't use Wayne's World 2. But as a Pacer owner, I had to use Wayne's World 2. So when we take a look, high-level future plan. So we had these tools, set up at the beginning, right? I had those 4 phases, and then we were supposed to go back and take a look at it here. Now we're diving a little bit deeper. What do some of these things mean? As we go from an immersion to the planning to building and then to deploy, what do those pieces mean? Immersion, right? Maybe you're on 365 already, but the component that you're missing is meetings and voice. I had to go help a client in Wisconsin, so we can talk bad about them in Wisconsin. I had to go help a client in Wisconsin that decided they were moving to Microsoft Teams Voice without ever gathering any requirements on what they needed in Microsoft Teams Voice. They were halfway down their deployments before they said, uh-oh, we can't do this. Oh, sorry, Teresa. I just picked on her. Now she's in Wisconsin. I'm just kidding. I grew up in Wisconsin, so I'm spent quite a few years there as well. So I can knock it to a little bit. But when we think about that aspect of it here, that's important to really understand what are those requirements, getting immersed in that technology. What can it do? And most important, what can it not do, right? That's a key element there. Then when we take a look and come down further, the planning and proof of concept. What types of pieces do we need to look at? So if you're still waiting to get Exchange up there, what's the mail flow? What's some of those access policies? What spam filtering tool are you going to use? What backup solution? Gosh, that could be a poll here as well, right? What backup solution should we use? Are we migrating from Skype for Business to Teams? There's a lot of thought there. What are those things? What things do we need a proof of concept before we can go and start doing? The same element here when it comes to building and configuring for us. What do those look like? What do we need to configure? One of the pieces that I always like to say is, what do those collaboration spaces look like? What is a collaboration space? It's not your policies and procedures library or repository. It's where is the work getting done? What does that look like? Is it in Teams? Is it in groups? Is it only in SharePoint? Do you need an email address? Do you not need an email address? That's some of those elements here, as you take a look at building it. And then the last piece here is that onboarding and constantly deployment of the support piece of it as well. So when we take each of these little elements, right, and we start to build them in, I think it's important to really say, all right, we have this one element. Let's focus in on one of them. Let's focus in on SharePoint. And the reason I'm going to focus in on SharePoint is a very simple scenario. SharePoint was deployed in an organization in 2010 and never touched and never updated, and users hated it. And now you want to put SharePoint back in again? How do we help out with that? Let's take a look at that approach here. We need to identify, the phased introduction. What's the business purpose? Why are we bringing SharePoint back in? Is it replacing another intranet tool? Is it replacing Igloo or Passageways or some other intranet tool that's out there that's costing us thousands and thousands of dollars a year? Or what is the key business purpose? Do we want to use it for something more? Is it an issue that's been bothering us for some time? Yes, we don't have a good way to communicate out information. What's the champion aspect of it? When we think about the champion piece of it here, who should be those users that come in and are involved and included in on the 365 side of it from a deployment? Champions are very, very important to success. Why? Because IT cannot do it all. It needs to rely a little bit around the business aspect here. The training and the feedback side of it, how do we train it? Do we use YouTube? Do we use Microsoft support? Do we use LinkedIn Learning or another third-party tool? And then what does that feedback look like on a regular basis? So let's take a look at what it would look like if you deployed Planner. Microsoft Planner, pretty simple task management tool. So what's the business purpose here? Maybe we're using Microsoft Project, we're using tasks. People are using Excel, some are using their head. and it's just not working. So how can we help with that? What's the department, right? Do we have the ability to take a look at marketing department or maybe event planning? Maybe we create a playlist of videos for users to watch on YouTube. And then we do a weekly check-in through email or Teams meeting, collect feedback, whatever the case may be. We're just constantly keeping a look at and small, getting a business purpose here defined. Another tool that you've seen maybe pop in a little bit more popular here is the concept of bookings. Bookings is an add-on here to Outlook for it. It's included with your Office 365 plan, but it's the ability to basically publish out a calendar and allow other users outside of your organization or inside book time on a calendar. It kind of grew up in the professional services or personal services realm. That's where it was primarily used, I guess, for reservations for it. But I'm seeing a lot of organizations start to adopt it as lobbies and office spaces need to be limited. So what are some of those bookings? What are those out there? Maybe a financial services organization or an FI needed to manage who'd be in a lobby. They were using an existing reservations line where users, called. We focus in on a specific branch or location that's having that issue. Recorded a quick demo and then have our daily check-ins with the users to make sure that things are working out well, that they don't need additional help, that all users were able to be successfully using it. Just out of curiosity, anyone using bookings today, feel free to put that in the chat window if you are. I'd just be interested to see, what level. Couple hand raises, assuming that's what that means, Jake, that you're using it. So just started. Yeah, it's a great tool. I think it's a great tool to think about, but it's one of those that it needs feedback. I'll be honest with you. There's different quirks and things that are a little bizarre out there as well. Interesting, Collie. Great example. Customer use bookings to schedule Windows 10 updates or upgrades. That's an interesting approach, but I can see that working too, right? There's different use cases for all these tools. All right. Next piece here to take about and think about here. We have the ability here to see kind of a productivity roadmap that's out there. This is a sample one. So if you're someone that's using Skype for Business today and you need to move to Teams, kind of what does that look like? Or more importantly, you feel like you're not using any of the productivity tools. What are some of the items to think about? Very general focused here for us. When we think about this for us, migrating to Microsoft Teams is really important. Maybe it's the idea of reviewing any policies that users are using. Maybe we need to deploy an organizational team for networking, right? Use that all-employee team that's out there that comes standard now, but maybe you had it and you just never used it before. When we expand on those collaboration spaces, what are those? Do we need to expand existing groups to teams? Do we need to create a request process so when users request something, they don't have to go to the help desk, it just gets auto provisioned for them? Those are all things to think about, and I know you guys have the ability to kind of look and see through these items as well for us. Continuing on, is there a need for social network? Is there a need here for more or less, using Yammer? What's the mobile access piece of it that looks like? So those are all elements here to think about and to kind of go through here, as well as you take a look at it. All right. And then the next one here we're going to take a look at is that security roadmap here. So as we think about security, what way should we do things? The secure score is a really, really good way to take a look at it. There's also a piece called the productivity score as well that we'll take a look at here in just a moment. But those are some of the items to think about. Split it out, chunk it out. These are what we're going to do now. These are what we're going to do in the future. So what is the beginning and then what is the future? Let's take a look at both of those elements here inside of the admin center. So if we bring that back in here real quickly, the first item we're going to take a look at is that productivity score. That productivity score here, as we see it, if you're not aware, you do need to turn it on. As you turn it on, there's important elements here that it will be, take a little bit here to curate all your content. But from a demo environment, what you're starting to see here is there's the ability here to keep track of communication or meetings, as well as the ability here to think about that content collaboration, teamwork, mobility component as well here as well. So I think that that's a key, elements to think about is what are those changes and how do we, keep track of those different items. You'll notice as we take a look here that our productivity score kind of jumped recently from it. So what did we do differently? What did we use differently? But as you're looking at exploring that out there, where that's at and comparing to your peers. Most of the clients I work with care what other people are doing. And so that productivity score is a really good way to help out with that adoption. If we kind of unpack and open up that content collaboration, in a traditional organization, what are we seeing for most of it? Right now, this demo, we only have 10% of people that are collaborating. Uh-oh, it should be higher than that, right? So think about those different elements that are out there and how you can use this to help drive some of those adoption and drive some of that messaging around the way. Moving into our next piece here is the idea of the training element that's out there as well. All right. So this is one that I really like to focus in on. And if you've been in a session with me before, you probably have seen this here. I have not changed it one bit along the way, but this is a really good way for you to keep track of how are these tools going to be used in the organization. One thing that Microsoft doesn't do a great job with is using new names for new tools. Why does OneDrive mean one of three things? Why does groups mean a couple different things? Why do teams mean a different thing? What about a team site, right? I mean, we could go on and on and on about how they reuse these names, but a tool like this helps out in my mind. OneDrive, if you focus just on the very bottom portion of the screen, right? Very bottom portion of the screen. OneDrive, less formal, managed by the user. I'm in control. I should only be managing with a smaller group of people. Could I share that file with the entire organization? Yes. Should I share that file with the organization? Probably not. Then you have the teams in the middle part of it. What is it replacing? It can replace things like Slack, Team Email, Google Huddle. You could probably add Zoom on there these days, WebEx, GoTo, BlueJeans, right? If you're looking at trimming those costs, evaluate some of those other tools that are out there and where your existing subscription can help out. And then on the right-hand side of the screen is that SharePoint component. What is it? Typically, it's an intranet. Could replace your department file shares if you move or migrate those into 365. You could use team sites to present your calendars, repositories, news. You can use workflows. You can use custom integrations if you need to surface that content or have that be available as well. As you move to the right-hand side, more formal across the organization, right? More formal collaboration, more structured. It's managed by the organization, larger group of people involved in that decision-making and in that process. Let's take a look here at some other, information for us. Recommended, document flow. This is one that I think is important for a lot of us here to understand because it can mean a couple different things. You can start a file at one of three areas. We can start a file here, we can start a file here, or we could start a file here. Or there's that third place, which is your computer over here, right? And there's that other fourth place rather. If you still save onto your desktop, that's what that means. But let's say that I start my file right in this draft area. As I take a look and I start my file in this draft area, I have a couple options. I can either move it directly to SharePoint, I can move it into Teams, or I can do that one-off sharing, right? It's an easy way for us to have that collaboration piece of it. So what works for most organizations is, all right, is SharePoint where people go to see published content? And if you're brand new to Office 365, that's probably the answer. If you've been on Office 365 prior to Teams or prior to Teams really being a tool, maybe a year, 2 years ago, you're probably using SharePoint for some of that collaboration. And there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But when you think about a modern way of working, that modern way of working is, all right, I need my conversations and my files in the same tool, and that's Microsoft Teams. When I need to go and consume content, then what I do is I go into SharePoint to get that content from me. So that's a way that I can get it. Now, it's just one scenario. But again, having these different examples for your users will help with that adoption of these 3 tools and how they all work together. Because underneath, they're all the same. Sharing, version history, searchability, they're all the same. There's not anything different. When I click share in SharePoint or in Teams, not Teams yet, in OneDrive rather, I should see that share option identical, right? So that's the key element there to take a look at. All right, there are some training elements here for you as well, just to make mention. In the Admin Center, there's a couple guides that are available for admins and users. And then there's also some setup guidance that you can take a look at and start to see those elements here as well. So I think that that's more or less a key component here to think about. The tool that I'm going to jump into here, first of all, is some of the cheat sheets. There's cheat sheets. Everyone likes a little handout or little takeaway for them as well. The one that I'm going to jump into here for the next few minutes is a tool called Microsoft Learning Pathways. Learning Pathways is a template that's available free of charge from Microsoft. It is in its third iteration, so it's been used a few times. It's not brand new for it, but it's a good tool. It uses out-of-the-box SharePoint. So I can use out-of-the-box SharePoint. It throws in some images, throws in content and links for us as well. You can also utilize a customizable web parts if you didn't want to deploy an entire site. And it can be deployed from the SharePoint lookbook for it. So just keep that in mind along the way. So let's take a look at what this looks like. All right, I already have it deployed. If you're curious how to deploy it, this is how you deploy it. We come out here to the SharePoint lookbook site. Just do a quick search for it online. Come to Solutions, go to SharePoint or Microsoft Learning Pathways. The one that I am starting to play with here a little bit is that new employee onboarding hub. That's a common scenario that most organizations are not good at, is onboarding. I have not taken a big in-depth look at that one yet for it. But if we come into Learning Pathways, here's what the site is once it loads up here for us. Here's the site. I click Add to my tenant. As long as I have the correct permissions and prereq set, that site is deployed in my environments. I deployed one here this morning, called it MN0365 for us. So here's my site. When we think about this site aspect of it here, along the way, I think it's really important for us to sit and think about, those elements that are out here and what this actually means. So this is a site to help us uncover and find some content that we can give to users to help from a training aspect of it. So here, as we take a look at it from a user side of it, yes, you can edit and change the pictures and change the links as well. There's an admin success area, but I'm going to give you the quick high-level tour. When a user clicks on Microsoft 365 training, they see a few different things. They see some, first days or recommended training. What are those playlists that you want users to do? What scenarios do you care about? And then down below, what products do you want users to focus in on? You can turn off these specific tools. So if you're not ready to have users know that Yammer exists, you can turn it off as well so it doesn't show up. You can also, add your own content as well if you wanted to. So there's a lot of different items here, but let's explore this a little bit. Let's explore the working remotely. First thing here to look at is there's one for end user working remotely or best practices for collaboration. I'm going to jump to this working remotely. And what you'll see is this is made up of a couple different videos and more or less different chapters if you want to look at that. So there's already content created for you as well. Those little drop downs or the next arrow across the top of the screen is a really good way to navigate around this element. Guess what? If you're ready to send this link out or want to send this link out to your users, you can use that link, copy it, send it, and they'll come directly here. So instead of telling a user to go out to support.office, you're giving them an entire training hub. You're giving them the ability here to see that content. Like I said, you can create your own playlist as well. So we'll see that here in just a moment, and actually create and add in your own content. Maybe they're videos that you've already recorded. You have the ability to do that. So in this case of it, let's jump back out to the main homepage here. We'll come back into the getting started with Microsoft Teams. So here's the different elements of Teams. What items are out there? Well, all right, meetings. We're gonna, users are gonna move from Zoom to Teams. Fun fact about moving to Teams for meetings, and not that this is gonna be more cost effective, but I had a client that had already raked up over $26,000 in GoToMeeting bills this year when they had Office 365, but they didn't know anything about Teams meetings. So they were introduced to it, and then they immediately made that transition for it. And although they had to purchase some audio conferencing and other equipment for it, headsets and those types of pieces, so they didn't use every waking phone line as a solution. They've seen that cost decrease quite a bit. So if we jump into the meetings aspects of it, there's a lot here from meetings, so we can see those steps along the way. And again, keep in mind that from a user side of it, it's a really easy way for them to go ahead and bring those items in and jump to those different areas. Let's come into the admin portion here. So I'm going to just click outside of it, come into the home admin side of it. And again, this is meant just to be a quick overview, right? I'm not expecting you to get too technically deep into this element here, but as I come into this learning admin center here, this is where I can control that content. This is where I can turn things on and off. This is where I can create my own playlist as well. So here's my first days. What do I want to have done in the first days? What users should be doing? Let's come down here and let's say, Yammer's a great tool, but we're not quite ready to roll that out. So I'm going to just click on the eyeball, turn that off, and now Yammer, as soon as search indexes that, Yammer will not be available anymore. Users will not see that on my page. What other scenarios are out there so we can see those? Let's jump into the getting started portion here real quickly. And I can come underneath first days and I can add a new playlist here to that area. A playlist is those group of training to bring together. So in this case here, I can create a new one. I'm just going to call this demo. Here for it as well, I have the ability to jump into the technology. There's no technology for this aspect of it. I can tag it to a specific category if I want to, give it a level or audience. I can change the image just from a demo purposes. I'm not going to do that. Now that I've saved the portion here, I can go ahead and add a new asset. I can add a new asset. So in this case, I can say that it's a welcome video. I can enter a URL of an existing page if I want to do that, right? Maybe it's already created somewhere else and I need to just go ahead and do that. I can enter in the URL of a specific page or specific item that's out there. Just for ease sake here, let me see if I can. Don't know if this is going to take. I've never tried that before, but let's give that a try. So you can see the idea to add in all those different assets and bring that together for it. If I click on products here specifically, keep in mind that I have the ability to add additional training under each of the products. And yes, you can create your own product line, your own tile if you want to do that as well, or own focus area, but there's a lot of different items here as well. I can add a new subcategory. Maybe you have a specific ERP or CRM solution and you want to bring those in there. Does this replace your existing LMS? No. If you don't have an LMS, this is a really good way to do this. Keep in mind, One of the scenarios that you could do is, could you put your training videos in stream and have a form attached to that stream video that recorded the responses for users to keep track of if users are watching the videos? Yes, you could, right? So you have some possibilities here of making the tools talk together, but in terms of it, it's a really good solution to help out with those. Let's take a look here. I'm going to jump back out. Let's see if we have those 365. I added it on the first days, right? Here's my demo. I click here. Here's my welcome video. I don't know if Bing's going to let me surface in an iframe, but I think you get the idea for it. Typically what I do, if it's a PDF document, as long as it's available in a document library that's available to everyone, you could drop that in there. If it's a YouTube video, you could drop that embed link in there, that specific source link there, as well as stream. So just think about that in mind, that you can bring that content together and be able to add that all together. So a really powerful way to make that happen. All right. Let's continue on here from the learning pathways approach here real quick. And I'd like to jump into a few different features, that I think is important, as well as collecting, some of that feedback. So we just got a few more minutes here left. So some of the features that I like to highlight along the way for us is My Analytics. I think My Analytics is a really good tool for you to use and help with that adoption of 365. It's a tool that requires no administration on your part. That administration is all there for you. But when we think about it, what is it really showing us? It's showing us how often we're working. Do we have quiet days? Do we not have quiet days? Who are we actively working with along the way? So when we think about that, there's elements here in terms of, what are we distracted with? Do we work during our meeting time frame? Do we have meetings outside of our quiet hours? Do you send meeting, the bottom one in the bottom right-hand corner, I email others outside of working hours. People have spent over 13, almost 14 hours outside their working hours viewing emails that I've sent to my company in the past 4 weeks, right? Maybe I want to stop doing that. Maybe I want to schedule my emails to go out as well. Next piece here, as we take a look at it, is who am I working with? Who do I collaborate on a specific purpose? So you can see some of your, colleagues, close colleagues, as well as outside or external individuals. What type of meetings? I have, I guess, 51% of attendance. I don't do a lot of chats and meetings, or emails rather, during meetings, I guess. So a lot of different items here that are brought in from a user side of it. The other piece that's part of analytics is that insights piece of it. This is displayed here inside of the online portal of Outlook, but there is an add-on available inside of Outlook as well for you. But when you think about this, what I really like about Insights is it's a tool that can tell you what you're missing or what you haven't done. So I like to look at Insights every Friday afternoon. And the reason why I choose Friday afternoon is generally I don't have a lot of meetings. Generally, my workload, I have done what I'm going to get done for the week. But in this case of it, I can say, all right, what should I work on? What have I not done yet? In this case of it, maybe it's important people or specific documents that I haven't looked at. The one that I really like, though, is down here, the view important tasks. If I said I was going to get to something and I haven't done it yet, it's going to alert here. So if I send you an email and say, by Friday or by Monday, you'll get this, and that Monday has come and passed, guess what? It's going to alert me here that says, hey, you have tasks to do. You haven't done everything you said you were going to do. And then, of course, preparing. So it's a really good kind of list to go through if you're just kind of ready to cross some things off your list and ensure that you're not missing something. Another tool that I think's a little bit, doesn't get a lot of love, I should say, is Shifts. I have to say that with a strong T, I guess, or F and T. But with that, that's a really good tool to allow for scheduling purposes, right? So that's a tool that's used in Teams. So you're seeing it here inside of Teams, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in Teams in general, it could be directly into the web browser as well. All right. The last feature that I think is important just for users to kind of know about is one that's still relatively new, not necessarily that well adopted yet, is the request file. So if you go into your OneDrive and you have the ability here to create a folder, when you create a folder, you'll notice that there's a new icon up there called request files. That request files is a really good way to collect data from the outside or from other users. If you want them to be able to upload that content, share it with you. It can replace other tools out there, allow for users to use OneDrive that may have struggled with, all right, I like Citrix ShareFile because I know, or I like Dropbox because users send me files. Well, in this case of it, this is a really good way to replace some of those components. All right, last section here for us and last few slides here. As we're taking a look at that collecting feedback for users, Microsoft has some templates and forms that are available here for you as well. So I think that it's really important to think about collecting that feedback. Don't be afraid to collect feedback and keep track of what users like and what they don't like. It can help drive some of that repeat cycle. We all need refreshers every now and then. We forget things or we just don't know what we don't know. As a key element along the way. All right. And then the last piece here to take a look at is some of the elements here to think about in terms of, adoption services that are out there. Maybe you can, go ahead and set up some onboarding aspect of it or engagement and then track the specific metrics here as well to really keep track of those different elements here. As well. So just something to think about here as we go through itself. But as I mentioned, we'd be about 75, 80 minutes. I guess we're at the 80 minutes mark. So the last piece here is, thank you for your time and attention. I appreciate following along in the chat for some of you here. But hopefully when you go down this journey, depending upon where you're at, hopefully you picked up some different tips and tricks to help out with that adoption and some of those training elements. If you haven't looked at the Learning Pathways solution, I'd encourage you to give it a try, see what's out there. If you're really missing that element of training, it gives you that mini training environment that allows users to access it as well. So with that, I know that we have some gift card information here coming. Dun, dun, dun.
We do. And the winner is, in our very technical process, Teresa Thieler. Teresa, if you can send me your email to through the chat or to me directly, that would be great. It's Ted Martin. And thank you, Pat. That was fantastic. Appreciate it very much.
Teresa, I picked on her when she joined themselves in the Wisconsin side. So
that's right.
Yeah, so that's my fault, I guess, on why Teresa got it, right, everyone?
Oh, you know what? She is from Wisconsin. Oh, I think there's a rule about that. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
They say the same thing about Minnesota and worse about Illinois. So let's keep that in mind, right?
Yes. Yeah, we're not doing too bad.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I'll stick out if there's any questions, Ted. So turn it over to you.
Well, we'll let them ask any questions they might have. I just wanted to mention that there will be a survey at the end on the last presentation of the day. There'll be a survey there to fill that out and make sure you do, because that one is going to qualify you for a Surface Go 2. So please stick around for that. And if anybody has any questions for Pat, please come off mute and we'll use the last few minutes here if they do.
And if you're not following the chat, Corey posted a really funny how Microsoft names software, dog, and dog for business. So I love that, Corey. I may have to borrow that. It's a good one.
No questions? Anybody? That's the survey that you're going to fill out. You can either do it. End of the day would be preferable, but we have Holly Petersen coming up next. You know, I never put this together, Pat. Is there a relationship?
There is no relationship. I don't.
And I know Holly as well.
Yeah, there's no relationship.
But I've never asked. Yeah.
We could start like Petersen and Petersen or something.
That's right.
Hey, it's the best last name. It's the only correct spelling.
That's correct. That's correct. Well, you're coming up in 8 minutes. I have to say that
Yep.
this track, this adoption track, has been jam packed full of great information. I mean, all of our sessions have gone almost the full time. It's just been fantastic. Every one of the presenters has been great so far, and I am hesitant to say we're saving the best for last because I think they were all great. But Holly is
I know it.
fantastic.
No, I learned so much, Pat.